So you think about sort of a typical product development strategy. How is technology, disruptive technology specifically, which is happening so fast today, how is that affecting product development?
Certainly when we start thinking about disruption, and Clay Christensen obviously wrote the original book on disruption, and there's obviously been a lot of talk in the media about disruption over the years. Mostly good, some more negative coming out recently. Disruption is kind of fascinating for business leaders and executives because it's terrifying, right? Because it's the sense that it's the things that you were doing successfully that will lead to your downfall and failure that makes organizations become afraid. I mean, that certainly leads to that level of obsession and fear and paranoia potentially. As a result, to the extent that managers are trying to be proactive and think about how to protect themselves against disruption, the instant response is to bet on everything, right? To just invest in anything that looks like it might be disruptive. And if we think about what it really means to be disruptive, it really means, the way Christensen talks about it originally, is that this technology starts off as inferior to the existing technology, but it eventually progresses at a level that makes it perform better, or makes it perform well enough to be successful. And if you look around at any given moment, there's a lot of inferior technologies out there that maybe could end up being great new things. And if you're really paranoid about disruption, managers will look at all of those things out there and feel like they have to be looking at all of them. They have to be paying attention to all of them. And that's usually more than most managers can handle. Right. It's more than most organizations can handle. Both financially, cognitively, organizationally, whatever, they just can't do all those things. And so I think you're faced with a choice, right? You're faced with the choice of go down this path of investing in everything, going with the old story, which was just focus on what you're good at and may hope you don't get disrupted in some way. Or if you want to try and find the happy medium, it's this sense of, look, we're going to still continue to focus on what it's made us successful, the things that have gotten us here in the first place, that are generating the profits, that are keeping our shareholders happy and fueling the business's growth in the future. But we're going to focus on being responsive, being adaptive. We're going to think about what are the capabilities that we're going to need if whichever one of these inferior technologies kind of emerges as a potential real disruption. If it does, what are we going to need to be good at, right? So maybe we don't worry about each individual technology, but we think about what's this going to look like, right? Maybe we might need to, these technologies will bring us closer to the consumers. And so maybe we just need to start already thinking about what consumers really want and how they interact with the technology, because that'll help give us insights into what's going to win, but also help us to develop these capabilities along the way. And so as a result, one of the best ways to do that is to invest in some of these things because it gives you some experience. But you're not investing in them thinking that this is the answer. You're investing in it as a learning opportunity to say, look, this will help us keep tabs on what's going on. It'll help us develop some skills. And even if this is the wrong one and it's something else over here, we're in this. We're thinking about it. And we're going to be much more responsive and adaptive than someone who just stands to the side and says, when it really comes to be a threat, then I'll pay attention. Because it's really hard to know what to pay attention to in that case.
And when you say invest in something, what does that look like? Or what can that look like?
So there's a bunch of different ways you can do that. Obviously, you can invest internally. You can invest your own R&D dollars. You can do that through your own organization, through your existing R&D process. A lot of firms will kind of do it through what we've classically called a skunk works approach of kind of we'll set something aside somewhere else that will kind of work on it, but it's still part of the firm. Or you may invest in it by investing in a handful of small startup firms that are, trying to kind of work on some of these things, and you sink a little bit of money into them with an option to invest more if you really want to. It partly depends upon what your objective is. The more removed you are from those investments as an organization, the less you'll learn from them. They can be good bets. They can be a good way to hedge, right? Investing in these small startups and things like that. But there's not going to be a ton of information that flows back to you from doing that. You'll get some, but nowhere near as much as you would if you invest in it yourself. And even if we think about the choice between investing in it for as your own organization and doing it through a separate company or a smaller company, or doing it internally within the big firm, the more separated it is, the harder it becomes to figure out how to reintegrate that learning back to the firm. So it really becomes, you may need to do it if you truly believe that your existing product development process will kill the idea before it gets too far. which some firms might, right? I mean,
Right.
some processes might. They're so risk averse, they're so focused on short-term payback that they would potentially kill it. Then you might need to set it up separately in some way. But if your process is working pretty well and you're willing to invest in some of these things, maybe you kind of call something out as being strategic, and maybe the numbers don't look great, but it's a learning opportunity, and so it's a worthwhile investment from that point of view. And then if you keep it within the firm, you can be much more responsive and learn a lot more from that process along the way. So figuring out what's the right way to do it based on what your objective is and kind of how your organization will do with handling kind of different types of projects will kind of dictate how you should think about kind of managing that product development strategy for the firm.